Today, we're looking at a green ink by Thornton's. Green. Man, they're creative in their names. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you are in a hurry, you can skip around. But if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib. I wrote with it for a day, and I used it to take my notes for this video. For the first writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There is an additional writing sample that'll happen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in cartridge form. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both shows no color variation, and we don't get it in the writing. Tomoe River with no bleeding and normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is just a tad lighter than the stub, just a smidgen. With no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 19 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and there is none. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 13 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get any. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And I would expect a lot more color variation in the writing than what I'm getting based on this chromatography. That very nice bright green at the bottom and the bright blue at the top, those two together, I frequently see a lot of shading come out of an ink when this happens. Now, we didn't get a ton in the writing samples, which was a little surprising for me. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and we do see a difference in the green in that it looks a little tamer there than it did in the first one. In the first one it's really running wild away from the water. Here it's moving up much slower, leaving a very light tone behind, giving us a better idea of what this color is going to look like, but still that it's not going to be resistant. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I'm surprised at how well it did. It handled itself very nicely. I feel confident using this in a note-taking situation if I want to go back and highlight. Now, water's lifting all the darkest tones, but not the lightest tones. We see a lot of light green left behind, which sort of does fall with what we see happen in the second chromatography, in that the green is quite different. Now, Pen Flush completely removed it from the paper. It also completely removed it from my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution, which you're not going to need, completely obliterates it off the paper. I test viscosity or flow by using a tilt test that I've linked in this video. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Thornton's green has a viscosity of 2.7, making it normal.
To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds.
Thornton's green has an average dry time of 14 seconds, making it still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Thornton's green, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice brown, and I chose Colorverse Space Laika.
The second writing sample is done on TWSBI and Moleskine paper.
Here we're looking at TWSBI notebooks. Now we get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a lot lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we didn't get it in the writing. Last up is Moleskine notebooks. And I'm not using Moleskine to be able to bash it and say how bad it is. More, I like finding inks that do very well on it. Because if you like Moleskine, let's find inks that work well. Well, this one has a lot of bleed. It has a lot of ghosting. It does not come through and touch the page underneath. So there is a very good side there. It's just you can't use the back of the page. Now the medium has a ridiculous amount of feathering. I wouldn't use it because of that amount of feathering. It is distracting to me. It's got no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. That's the medium. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub. It also has a ridiculous amount of feathering with no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. All of this just means this is not a great ink for this paper, but we have found some, and maybe one day I'll do a review on Moleskines where I point out the inks that worked well. The scrubby shows no color variation. We didn't get any color variation. And that's all that I have for the writing samples.
So what do I think of Thornton's green? This is a very consistent, plain green. The tone is not quite what I cared for. There's no real shading in it. It feels like a loss to me in some ways, but it is very inexpensive to use. So that's not a bad thing. Just the tone is completely wrong for me. What nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? I don't really see it as mattering. It seems to always give the same tone no matter what pen I put it into, so dealer's choice. If you've made it this far, and according to my analytics, 50% of you aren't, and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.